Hello and welcome to the Turn 4 podcast. I am your host, Dan Maldonado. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. It's good to see you. This podcast comes from two lifelong fans of IndyCar and other forms of motorsport. Before I get started, I got to introduce you to my co-host, the sockless Tim Reiner. Hey, Timmy.
Hello, Dan.
The sockless, the freshly shaven, the very smooth foundation. Looks great today.
Yeah, I had some very important meetings, so I had to shave.
I had meetings
before this morning. I was looking like you,
Scruffy?
But I took it all off so I could go to some important meetings and sell a few things. So
there you go. Good job.
I could sustain the household because we know the podcast isn't paying any bills.
Not yet. Gonna get some of that Sirius XM money like Hinch and Rossi.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. We're working on it.
How are you? Good? Good weekend?
I'm good. Yeah. How are you, Dan?
Healthy? I'm great.
You made it better. You made it back in the country? They let you in?
Yes. It was interesting. Yeah. That's fun, right? So the guy, you can get out easily. You come back, we get in the line. We're clearly in the wrong line because the line to our left passed 5 cars before one car got through our line. And I'm thinking there's something going to go down. Then they even opened another lane on the right of us and they let 2 cars go before I even got into this line. So we get all the way up there and the guy's like, we hand him our passports and what's your reason for your visit? We tell him. He's like, oh, did you have fun? I said, oh yeah, we had a blast. Everything was good. And he's like, are you bringing anything back with you? No. Nothing? I'm like, no. He goes, no souvenirs or any, and hold on a minute. Yeah. We, and Jill's in the back, right? She's like, oh, I got this shirt and got another shirt. We got a mug and, a couple other things like that. I said, and he goes, okay, well, that's not nothing. He goes, you're bringing stuff back. And I go, yeah, you're right. And I'm kind of laughing and I'm like, no, you're right. I said, but when you ask me that question, I feel like you mean like produce, meat, a cat or something, that probably shouldn't be coming back into the country. Yeah. I said, not souvenirs like that. He goes, well, that's not nothing. And I'm like, okay. So, and he's like, all right, you can go. And then he just handed my stuff back. But I think he was just looking for a friend, to be honest with him.
Yeah, we're looking for somebody to pick on, right? I think that's kind of their job. Let's pick on people.
And it's fine. It's funny. I remember a story, me and, we're going to lose all our listeners already. Bill from Shelby and I went over there. We were kids. We were late teenagers, right? 19 years old because you can drink in Canada, not in the United States when we were 19. And they pulled us aside. They went through my car, with a fine-tooth comb, one end to the other. They looked in everything they could.
Well, you two look like trouble.
Oh, yeah, because we are trouble. And so they refused us and sent us back.
They wouldn't let you in the country?
Home. Yeah, they wouldn't let us in. So I went back home, got my dad's car, went back, got right in.
Okay. So everybody now wants to know, what were you driving and what did you get through?
It was a brown 1984 Chevy Camaro Z28. And I went back for a late 80s, early 90s Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais. That's what I got. Funny. And let me tell you, I was 19 in 1994. So yeah, the Camaro was not exactly new.
Nice.
So, and Chevys at that time aged rapidly. So,
so was it the car? Did you change the story of why you were?
No, we were just going in have dinner and probably grab a couple of drinks or whatever. So yeah, they let us through, just right through. Just depends on who you get, I'm sure. So, and we had an amazing time though. And as you know, because I texted you late last week, it came together kind of late, whether or not we were going to do this. Part of it was the dogs. We needed to make sure that the dogs had a place to stay. And apparently there's a shortage of the flu vaccine for dogs, but that's a different podcast. And so we got that all handled with the dogs. Dogs could go to camp. So the dogs went off to camp and we went to Toronto, drove in. It was about 4 hours, and that includes the, trip over the border and all that, which is super easy. And then obviously it rained on the way there. If you watched any of the Peacock coverage over the weekend, you know it rained on Saturday. So it rained on the way there. It
Yep.
was fine. Sunday morning was nice. It was overcast until about race time, and then it started getting sunny and hot. And it was,
Yeah.
but it was good. It really was. It was great to be there. I don't know that I would call this one a bucket list, but it was really fun to go. I was thrilled that, my bride, my lovely bride, was so anxious to go and so game to go, I should say, and as well as baby girl, right? She got a chance to come with us
nice.
and come out to the races. So it was nice to spend time with them too. Of course, my son is traveling this week, so he didn't get a chance to come with us. Not sure that he would. He's opted out of some IndyCar race attendance in the past. So, but
yeah, I was at your house and he was standing right there.
Yeah, that's right.
And
yeah,
we went off to Indy and he went to the GP. So I had my two sons and Jonathan was hanging out. I think he had some other plans though. So
yeah. Well, your son is 14.
Good. So you guys were Sunday only attendees, is that right?
Mine's 23. Or going
yeah.
But yeah, Sunday only.
Sunday only.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah. We walked. We went down by the tracks Saturday to see what was happening. That wasn't a great idea. We ended up walking in a great big circle about 3 miles plus, and saw absolutely nothing and accomplished absolutely nothing other than blisters on baby girl's feet.
Oh no.
And mine too, because I was wearing the Hey Dudes and I had some grit that was getting in there. It was unreal. So
the Hey Dudes. We just bought some Hey Dudes.
I love my Hey Dudes. I'm on my second pair of Hey Dudes. I love them.
I didn't know these things existed until I went shoe shopping with my son.
I had them for a long time.
Oh, and I was like, "Hey, dude, check these Hey Dudes out" to my son, and he ended up getting a pair. But yeah. I don't have one. I'm not that cool.
Love my Hey Dudes. No, you're a Vans guy, right? Because you're an old skateboarder from way back.
No skateboarding in my past. Not a whole lot, a little bit. But yeah, no, I do have some Vans, but they're not comfortable. If they can make them a little more.
I know. I have a pair of Vans. I also have the Converse too, and they're horrendous.
Yeah, they're not good. Yeah.
Needless to say, we're never going to have Vans or Converse as a sponsor of our show when we go to Sirius XM. Get some of that Hinch and Rossi.
Well, if they sponsor us, we'd say different things.
Exactly. Yes, of course. Before we get into this, can I make a few observations from the race? We've been to a lot of races, right? We've been to the 500, we've been to GP. I went to Road America this year. I it was like heaven.
Yep. I've been to Milwaukee. I've been to the Chicago race back in the day when it was in Joliet or whatever it was, wherever the track is. Yeah.
So
you name it. We've been to a lot of them.
Yeah. So it was good. It was different. The first thing I'll say to you is, and this is not the first time this has happened to me, but you cannot bring in your own fruit or drinks to the racetrack. They don't allow it.
It's a Canada thing, right?
Maybe.
Because you can do it at every U.S. track I think I've ever been to.
I went.
It's like the one event you can bring your own stuff.
I went with Bill from Shelby one time, our only time, to the Cleveland race, and they would not allow anything in on Saturday. And the fandom went insane. So on Sunday they allowed you to bring everything in, but they tried to stop you on Saturday. Nonetheless, no big deal, right? We were prepared for it. But also, if you look at the track map or like the event map, you see like where the food stations are, the merch stations and everything else, aid stations. They have these little stations there where they alleged they were going to have water stations. So you could go and fill up like your water bottle. So I brought my Yeti bottle and, when and Joe brought the aqua flask and, we're going to fill this thing up and hit it a couple of times during the day. So we didn't have to keep buying water or buy soda or whatever, but no water station.
Huh. That's bizarre. Or if you're going to advertise
totally
you have them, I think you would make sure you got them out there.
Yep.
I actually pulled up the map while you were talking about this, and I do see water stations and
between
the little symbol.
Yeah. So we were in stand M. And so we came down and walked over to that corner right at the end of the stand where we were at, right underneath the TV monitor where the water station should have been. And we didn't see it at all. We didn't see it at all.
And stand M, for those who don't know, is in which corner?
It's not. It's in pit out.
It's in pit out. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's in pit out. That's right. If you're looking at the event map, it doesn't have the stands. It just shows where the grandstands are.
Yeah, it doesn't have the, yep.
But anyway, we were walking around and we saw some folks coming in and they had Starbucks cups. And, of course, baby girl finds it.
If nobody knows, Dan's a coffee lover. He's drinking coffee all the time, and I'm sure he's got a cup right there.
If you're a YouTube person, you see me drinking coffee every time.
Yeah.
So nonetheless, right, I got to know what's going on. So I mugged this guy who's walking by, and he must have been mugged a couple other times too, because I didn't even get the question out. And he's like, right outside that gate in the Hotel X, he's like, there's a Starbucks in there. And I was like, and they let you bring it in? He goes, yeah, the guy at the gate. He goes, just show him your tickets. You're fine. I'm like, okay. So nice. We go walking out this thing, walking right into the Starbucks, get our order, ran into Alexander Rossi's fiance there. She couldn't have been nicer. Was chatting with her for a little bit.
Starbucks as well?
Yeah, she was before she went into the track, and was chatting with her a little bit. Got our Starbucks, walked right back in, showed the guy our tickets on my phone, walked right in. So I got my big old iced coffee, and the girls got their fancy cold drinks, whatever it is, and that was good. So I got a water from Starbucks too. So I put water in my Yeti, closed it up, and the kid never asked. He never even asked to look in my bag or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
2 things I'd like to comment on that. First, I think that's Canadian hospitality. Typically, when you're in an event, you can't leave and come back in. But if you're telling them where you're going, maybe that was the thing. The second thing, I'm surprised it's Starbucks and not Tim Hortons. But that's just me. You're in Canada.
Yeah, easily you see 3 Tims before you see a Starbucks. Easily.
Yeah.
Well,
good. Well,
we have Tim Hortons where we're at.
So you got your water there as well, so you're able to fill up your bottles and then come back in.
Yeah, so that was good. The other thing I'll point out
is it called the Hotel X? I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's right next to the track.
I thought you were like, I cannot say this brand.
No, Hotel X.
I see it on the map now. Okay.
Yeah. Obviously the Toronto track is longer than Detroit, right? Detroit was about a mile or what have you, and this is like 1.7 miles. In general, I would tell you that the experience itself feels smaller than Detroit did. Even when it was on Belle Isle, it felt smaller than what it was this year being downtown, which is unusual because if you look at the area behind the grandstands, you got this giant, parking lot, basically is what this thing is, this huge parking lot. So they have food trucks put out there and different stations like that and different experiences and vendors and stuff.
Thunder Alley, is that what you're referring to?
Yep, Thunder Alley.
Yeah.
And they had, without a doubt, they had more food choices than they did in Detroit. They had a lot more of the food trucks and choices and things like that than they did in Detroit. But it's a lot of like wasted space. But really, I mean, you couldn't see much, from there, even if you were to put up more grandstands because the proximity to the track wasn't great.
I see.
But a little further on the other side of that is where the general admission area is. So that's the area along Lakeshore. Okay. So they have berms set up there. It's just grass. So you can put your chair out there, your blanket or whatever, and you can see them come around. On the other side of Lakeshore is another gigantic parking lot. Nothing. No use of that at all. Remember in Detroit, they had, even in the free areas in Detroit along Jefferson, they had platforms set up there so people could stand on a platform and be elevated and see the race cars as they were coming through for free.
Yeah. So they even had a TV pointed that way, so you could watch it even on the screen too. You could watch the whole event.
Absolutely.
And not pay
for free.
A dime.
Yep. So it was kind of unusual to me that they didn't do anything with that Lakeshore area on the back, like no grandstands, no platforms, no nothing. And there really didn't look like there was a lot of people that were gathering there either, which was kind of surprising to me. So I say this because it brings me to my final point of it feeling small. Once you're kind of in that area where the grandstands were, and then around the corner where the other, another set of grandstands were, and then that iconic Honda bridge that you see, right, that the cars pass under.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's your only way out of the track area.
One way in, one way out, huh?
Pretty much.
That surprises me. Yeah.
Yes.
That surprises me.
And it's a cattle drive. I mean, you are just bumper to bumper. moseying along, mostly stopped, trying to get through, and then
Mm-hmm.
trying to get up into that little bridge, which was um, super steep up, super steep down, and getting over that little bridge to come around. And then you've got to make your way back through Exhibition Place to get out to like where we did. We rode the train in, so we didn't have to worry about parking. So to get back to that train station area.
Yeah,
So ingress, the egress is not great. Like I didn't think it was all that great. Particularly for like the footprint, what you would think would be the footprint for that. But there must just be
yeah,
some limitations in terms of some of the existing buildings, that soccer field that's there, and then Exhibition Place, and then there's something called, I think, the Coca-Cola Coliseum or something, and that's an issue too.
yep.
What I didn't think of was that gate where we went out to get the Starbucks. I'm sure we could have gone out that way, but it would have taken us well out of our way from the train, which is where most people were headed out. It felt like anyway,
I see. Yeah.
So, so that's kind of where we went. Which
So a
let me
little
tell
more
you, that
concentrated all along
very,
the pit lane, right, area, it
yep,
looks like.
yep,
In
very
those,
busy.
we'll call them S's.
Hmm.
We'll call them
Yeah,
S's for clarification there. But yeah, where the track winds right through there.
yeah.
Interesting. And the paddock, I see was there as well.
Inside the building,
Yep.
they had all the trucks set up in there. You couldn't get into the paddock area unless you paid extra. It was
Okay.
$50 a person. So, I think that paddock access, which was free on Friday, but that paddock access, I think in IndyCar is kind of a hallmark of IndyCar, right? I think that's one of those things that makes IndyCar very, very different, especially from Formula One, from other forms of motorsports where you have that much access and visibility, to what's going on. So,
Yeah, because you said at Road America you could go in there too, right? It was open just like
absolutely,
in
it was all
Detroit.
right there.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, it was
Okay.
just like Detroit, just walk right through. So,
Mhm.
um, one thing though, before I get into the Power Five piece here, I remember last year you saying that you wanted them to kind of spruce up the race. Like you thought, like on TV, it wasn't as visually appealing.
Yeah.
I think it was much improved this year.
It was. It
Yeah.
definitely was.
Yeah.
The fencing wasn't rusted anymore. They
Yeah.
even put in some of the new fencing that Detroit had, which is more
Yep.
like the FIH fencing. So I did notice that that's really going down in a turn 3 is where I really noticed it last year. And I was like, ooh, that doesn't look really good. But the other thing that
Right.
I noticed with the track and the course were just the manhole covers and the drains that were pretty deep, right? They weren't level with
Yeah.
the track surface or the road surface. And so that caused a lot of headaches when it came to going through the corners and redoing your line, or in the braking zone, there was a drainage grate. And so you had to avoid that. So there were some things that are typical for street courses, right? That's why we run on street courses, is to change it up and have different events. But yeah, I think some of that could have been improved too. And I'm sure, they looked at that after practice 1 on Friday,
Yeah.
and what
They
can we
did
do?
make
What can we
some-
change? I'm
yeah.
not sure they were able to change a whole lot, but maybe in future events, they're able to do that. But yeah, it looked much better
Yeah.
than last year on TV.
Yeah, I agree. Just wanted to point that out. Anyway, into the Power Five. Tim, first team, Power One. Ray Hall,
Shocked.
Letterman, Lanigan Racing. Perhaps you've heard of them, right?
I have.
You remember them? They were the team
Yeah,
that
normally
had
they're not up here.
normally not up here. They had 4
Nope.
out of 4 cars battling for the final row at the Indy 500. We all know what happened
Yeah.
there. They were
Mhm.
also the team whose lead driver, the namesake, crashed out under yellow in Detroit. Right? They're
Yeah,
also the
did the
team
wheel
that
slip out of his hand?
not this guy, another guy. They're also the team that more recently started second in Mid-Ohio with said namesake, started on pole in this here Toronto race, and won from that pole position. Perhaps you've heard of them, Tim. Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan, RLL.
I've heard of them. Yeah, I have heard of them, and I was quite impressed with how they came to play here in Toronto. But even what they did in Mid-Ohio was pretty impressive too. So I feel like they're kind of on this little run, right? They've got some mojo. They figured out some of their
Hopefully.
staff. They've got some people that are contributing very well to car setups, and they're making it happen. So
Yeah.
this is exciting. Like, this is what IndyCar needs, and this is what IndyCar wants, is have all the teams battling for victories throughout the calendar year. So
Right.
that's good stuff.
It's interesting. I love this. Right. It's a total Wolf thing. He kept saying it could be a false dawn. I love this phrase, right? This false dawn, and I don't think I've used it in the podcast, but I'm definitely using it here, right? My hope is that it's not a false dawn, that it's going to be something that leads itself into a rebound for Ray Letterman Lanigan. I think that what happened at Indy was a very loud wake up call, and it just continued to be a loud wake up call into Detroit. And we know that they made some big changes here. So and maybe it's paying off, but it's paying off very quickly. So it makes you, that's where I'm a little bit more tempered in terms of my expectations going forward. But they seem to be on track. So hopefully, they're all working at it, and I know that they're all working at it.
I think we first saw glimpses.
Bobby Rahal.
Yeah, we first saw glimpses of this at we were there, the Indy GP at Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he qualified well, Lundgaard did, and he faded a little bit, but they had good speed in qualifying and in practice and all that. And then, the Indy 500 was a disaster, came back to Detroit, was another disaster. You had a ton of changes that happened after all that. And then they've gradually, since then, have gotten better and better, in my opinion. So from my perspective, I don't think it's a hoax. It's been a process here over the last 4 or 5 races to come to where they were able to get on victory lane. So good for them. I don't think it's a false dawn, as you said. I think the sun is rising.
Oh, I like it. Good job, Timmy. This obviously first place, Christian Lundgaard. This is Lundgaard's first win in IndyCar on the back of his second pole of the season at a place his team boss, Bobby Rahal, took victory at in 1986, which was the very first Toronto GP. And this was Rahal's first win. If you can believe that, this is Rahal's first win in Toronto as a team owner. Which I think is interesting. So we'll see. Lundgaard went toe-to-toe with top teams here, Timmy. First, he held off Scott McLaughlin in the opening laps, and I think he did so handily. I don't think there was really much of a struggle there, right? He pulled out a pretty good lead.
He went out to 4 or 5 seconds. He was comfortably in the lead, no pressure from McLaughlin. Again, it was early in the race, but at that time, you're looking at it going, okay, he's got pace. And they had pace on both sets of tires. It wasn't like one was going to fall off really bad. They continued their charge. So good for, what they did on the car setup and what they did for drivability on a very, very rough track, as we all saw.
Yep. Even after the round of stops, he had to travel again through the field, and at a point needed to pass the current runaway championship leader, Alex Palou, to regain this lead.
Yeah.
Not only that, Tim, but he had to hold Palou at bay as well, right? Getting around him was one thing, but holding him off was another thing entirely. Toward the latter stages of this race, obviously Palou had some front wing damage. We don't know what would have happened. I would have loved to have seen what that race would have been like if Palou's car would have been, totally healthy. But I'm not certain that it would have changed anything in the ways of the outlook of how this race finished. So we'll talk about Palou in a little bit, but I think it's an outstanding win by Lundgaard, and I mean, just an amazing result for this team that has experienced, the lowest of lows this season.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if Palou's wing wasn't messed up, what that might have looked like. Lundgaard getting around Palou, because Palou is, a master at his craft. And I think we talked about it last race. But when you look at, what Lundgaard was able to do after he passed him, again, Palou's limping around in a car that's got a bad wing. At some point, he wins by almost 12 seconds. So that's a big margin, right? And so you got to look at pit strategy, like when they pitted and how much fuel they had, because that was a lot of this came down to the strategy for that, the fuel consumption, where were you at? You had drivers that pitted on the last lap in order to make it to the end, and you had other drivers that their engine quit during the lap to get around the track after the race. So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of movement in the field, a lot of action, but Lundgaard, looked like taking it from the pole, winning it, and being in command, right? I don't think there was ever a point that there was like, oh, I don't think it's going to work out, except there was some hype about that, I think, in the broadcast when they did pit and whether it was the right time. How is he going to get through the field? Herta's now the virtual leader because he can make it to go to the end, but he can't really make it to go to the end without saving a ton of fuel. So that just allowed Lundgaard to, really show his might and his muscle and show how good that car was throughout all the stints on every set of tire. And they were flawless in the pits, which has hurt them a few times too. You think back to Mid-Ohio, what happened in Rahal when he came in the pits and in a great position, had 2 pit stops that just didn't come together. It totally messed those up. So, man, when everything's clicking, and they
were clicking.
Yeah, Toronto.
Yep. Ninth place goes to Graham Rahal. Solid finish for Graham. Started 27th. Had that really light crash and just unfortunate conditions in qualifying, and it really could have been a very different day for Graham had he not been sort of sharply on the lookout for something to happen in lap 1, and sure enough, it did. He wasn't 100% avoiding. He did run into the back of, and I'm sorry, it's not in the notes. I can't remember who it was, but quickly got into reverse, which in these Indy cars is not easy to do. Got himself around through the Princess Gate and then back out through the escape road to rejoin the track. So he was able to get back through there. Unfortunately, 4 drivers, including his teammate Jack Harvey, days would come to the end, and then 3 other drivers would start, restart laps down at that point, at least a lap down. I don't think anybody can really argue that Graham isn't a smart driver. I think he's a smart driver. I think he's a good racer. And I think that some of this is qualifying, right? Having to constantly come through the field. We've been saying that since I think we started this podcast, but having to come through this and when you start that far back, I think you open yourself up to the possibility of running into some of that, into somebody else's bad luck.
Yeah.
Right. And I think in this case, he avoided most of the bad luck, not all of it, but he avoided most of it.
Yeah. I think he might've run into Benjamin Peterson on that first lap. I'm not absolutely sure, but I think that's who it was. And was able to have the wits to, back it up and go through the gate, whatever you want to call it, Princess Gate or something, in order to go around. And so, I think here's the thing though. I think you can sort of put qualifying sort of aside in this race because the conditions were so different from qualifying 1 to 2 to the sessions with rain coming. So, you'd like to be up there. Obviously, he had the issue that he started 27th, but I think he had pace that they might have been much further up if the weather conditions weren't what they were, and him making the mistake and hitting the wall and things of that sort. So, but you got to give it. Graham drives through the field and gets a top 10. That's
pretty good.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I always have my doubts about Graham. I just do for whatever reason. He just hasn't been up there. He hasn't been competitive, but at Mid-Ohio, he showed he had pace. Like I mentioned earlier, he had a couple pit stops that put him back. And then here you drive through a field that, you get a lot of passes on lap 1 because you make a smart move, but at the end of the day, you still got to get through everybody else to be where you're at, and finish really well. So I think those are really excellent finishes for both, obviously, and Lundgaard's is way over the top and awesome. I think the funny thing that was noticed at our house, I'm going back to Lundgaard for a minute, is that when he was handed the trophy, his eyes were like, wow, that thing is huge. Like he's going to, win in the major series and get this trophy and all that. And that kid's young and he had his friend there and they shaved their mustache. I want to go back to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Just all good stuff, all good. Like it warms your heart to see that just because, they've been trying and trying and trying. And, as a kid, if you ever dreamt of, being a race car driver and doing that, and you finally win at the top level and go through all the heartache that you went through with the team to get there, I think they're going to ride this wave. I really do. I think they're going to ride this wave. I think the whole team is going to ride this wave, and really do well throughout the rest of the season.
I hope so. Because, I'm always rooting for Rahal Letterman Lanigan. That's not that I'm a hater. I'm just a big fan. Right. I want to see them do well. I would tell you, moving off before we move off of Graham, I would tell you that I think we're going to open ourselves up for a whole new can of worms. I would tell you that I think Graham is your second best second gen driver. Al Unser Jr., Graham Rahal and Marco Andretti. I know you're a Marco fan. I think that Graham is a better pure racer than Marco.
Yeah, I don't know.
More
Maybe, but
accomplished.
you think it better than Al Jr.?
No, Al Jr.'s number one by far.
Oh, Al Jr.
Yeah,
Okay. I
yeah.
thought you were saying
Laps
yeah,
ahead of
okay.
the other guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Laps
Yeah,
ahead
yeah.
of the other guys. A league of his own,
Okay.
right? You almost don't consider
Yeah.
like it's hard to for me really to consider Al Jr. a second gen driver because by the time I came along, Al's dad was pretty much on his way out, right? So I never really
Yeah.
don't really
I
remember
don't think you can even
being
put
any
Marco in the
like that.
list. He's kind of third gen. I think you got to go
Yeah,
with Michael.
that's true. Yeah, yeah, you're there. Oh yeah, so there you go. Second gens, right? Al Jr., Michael, Graham,
and
Marco.
Graham. Yeah, Graham would be third on that list
There
by
you go. Yeah,
a long
Graham would
shot.
be.
Yeah.
There you go. I like it. All right, Jack Harvey, 24th, caught up in alert first lap issue there as we discussed. I watched the race this morning. You know, the booth is putting the blame on Jack. The stewards are putting the blame on Jack because Jack has a pending, and I don't think they carry over, but Jack had a pending penalty for avoidable contact. From what I saw on the broadcast this morning, Jack had the line inside. It's ahead of RHR, who was to his left. And then, of course, Blomqvist was on the outside of that. So, who do I put that on? I kind of put that on Ryan Hunter-Reay being able to say, Graham has this corner. I'm going to back out. And what is Blomqvist doing? Right? 41 years old or whatever, whatever he is, you kind of know better at that point, right? He's seen a lot of things. You'd think he would have seen that. Yeah. I'm not putting it on. I'm not putting it on Ryan. I'm not necessarily putting it on. I'm not necessarily putting it on Ryan. I'm putting it on both Ryan and Blomqvist because I don't think either one of them should have been in that spot on the first turn. And from what I saw, Harvey had the line.
So you're defending Jack on this one. You think it's from Hunter-Reay and the rookie Blomqvist?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took it for what the announcer said, and I took it that it was Jack's fault. I think it slid out a little bit, bumped, and then you had the incident. Unfortunate for sure, right? Because I believe, and I think all of us believe, Jack's driving for a seat. So to have an unfortunate incident like this on the first lap in the first corner is not good. He really
in a race where
results.
His team, right, has had a remarkable resurgence, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's been building in my opinion, it's been building and coming. And so to still have these unfortunate incidences where you finish 24th in the race is not good, not ideal at all. You get taken out of the high V car and now you're in a different car. And now there's rumors that David Malukas is coming over to that seat. I think I've heard some of that last week with you and or 2 weeks ago. And then I've heard it since then. And I said, at the time, I'm like, I don't think you want to go over there, but wow, if this is what this team's going to do and they're going to compete week in and week out, maybe it's not a bad choice.
Maybe. I don't know.
I know you want your guy Jack in there. So
I know.
I'm rooting for Jack
somewhere
for the rest of the season.
I think Jack will land somewhere. If Jack loses that seat, which I think he's going to, but I think Jack will land somewhere decent. I think he'll land somewhere where he can shake some of this off and move forward. So
yeah,
Tim, if I told you
spots throughout the year.
Yeah. If I told you after Detroit that a Rahal driver would get a win before Scott Dixon, Will Power, or any McLaren driver, would you believe me?
Nope, not a chance.
Right? No way.
No, I wouldn't have believed you. No. I think the only bright spot has been it's been the only bright spot up until now, except Rahal in Ohio. But I kind of wrote that one off a little bit because I think Lundgaard has got the talent. He's got what it takes. And obviously this win sort of backs that up. So it's easy for me to say it right now, but I always thought that beforehand. But to get a win before any of those guys this season, that's crazy. I think it's amazing. I think the other thing that's amazing about this victory, it's the first time in 3 years, right? For
2020.
And that's
Indy 500, Takuma Sato 2020.
Yeah. It's great for the whole organization. And so
it is.
I would have never believed that. I think coming in here, you think you would have got Dixon or, Will Power's got the most victories here with two. It's not many, but here out of the active drivers. And then no one from Arrow has won yet this year. When race one, first race of the year at St. Pete, it should have been won, but there was a glitch in the engine with Pato. Something went wrong.
Yep.
So, and
It's a
that
lot
gave
of
the
shoulda
victory
wouldas out
over
there.
to Scott, Marcus, no, yeah, Marcus Erickson. There you go. That's who got the win. Yep.
Which is a tremendous segue into our next power team, Chip Ganassi Racing, number 2, Alex Palou. Stop me if you've heard it. Continues his dominance of the 2023 IndyCar season with another podium finish. That's 9 straight top 5s. I wish I could take credit for that little nugget, but of course that was from Brian on Brian's Twitter. So thank you for that, Brian. He did, in my opinion, kind of got cheated a little bit in qualifying with the crazy weather, right? He was out on running his hot laps, and then the rain started, and it definitely impacted his qualifying effort. But
yeah, he didn't get out of Q1. He never made fast 12.
Didn't make any difference though, right? 15th place to finish second. He obviously had the wing issue at the end. Let me ask you, would he have taken this victory away from Lundgaard if he would have had a completely healthy race car?
He would have been tough to navigate by because remember, Lundgaard was coming through the field. So
yeah,
from that perspective, I think it would have been a little more difficult than what it was, but I don't think he would have. You never know. Hindsight's 2020. He might have pulled it off, but it would have been a lot of blocking, I think, in order to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he wouldn't have because I'm sure at some point Lundgaard would have been a little bit more desperate to hold Palou off, and I think Palou, being the championship leader that he is, I think would realize not to push the issue there because it's only going to wind up, in a bad situation, right? Where you
yeah,
wind
and
up
I
on
think
the back of a tow hook.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the pit stop strategy, Alex Palou had pitted 5 laps earlier than Lundgaard, so you had to save fuel for 5 more laps in order to hang on to that win. And I don't think you would have had the pace to do that because you figure Palou pitted on lap 43, the same with Herta pitted on 43, and you have Lundgaard on 48. Now remember, Herta ran out of fuel on the lap after the checkered flag, so they were scraping the barrel in order to make it on fuel. So I don't think it would have changed the order. But at the same time, I think
would have loved to have seen
Palou wouldn't have been under he wouldn't have been under as much pressure if he had a full if his wing was okay. I think he would have been in a much better position.
Right.
In second place.
Yeah. So he got the wing damage from a spinning Elio Castroneves, who was helped into that spin by Kyle Kirkwood, who we're going to talk about. But that's how that damage occurred. Elio spins, forces Palou to try and squeeze between a spinning Elio Castroneves and the wall. Nonetheless, that wing held on, Tim, right? They were saying the vinyl wrap by whatever it was, but it was hanging on a very bumpy track. And Palou was still diving into some of those apex, right? With the curbs there and the whole bit. So it didn't seem to me like he was there. Here's one thing I will say to you. I didn't see it on the broadcast this morning. I didn't see it obviously while we were there, but Ferrucci, who was caught up in that first lap issue, was ordered in by IndyCar for a hazardous mechanical situation. Not sure what that means, right? But if you were race control or the race stewards, would you have asked Palou to come in?
I think in any other series you would see that happen. In Formula One, you're not going to be able to drive around with that, right? That's an unsafe condition. Was I expecting a call? No.
So hold on, let me stop you there. We know that in Formula One because they have brought the Haas cars in for a couple of wing end plate situations that the team contended were going to be just fine. How they know that while that car's driving around, I have no idea. But
Mhm.
they were ordered in, right, for a new wing change. So you're right. I think if it were F1, he would have been ordered in to have that wing changed.
Yeah. I guess I wasn't thinking that it was they were going to call it in. I think these cars are durable enough. I think they have
Yeah.
enough safety features that if that wing does come off, could you go airborne maybe if it gets under it? Potentially. Could it have been disastrous if somebody else hit it? Potentially, but you did put the aero screen on all the
And they're
cars, so
tethered.
there is,
So if it
yeah,
would
they're
have broke
tethered.
off,
Yeah.
it would have just gone under his car. But that could have caused an issue elsewhere, right? He would have lost control of the steering
Yeah.
or what have you. I would have loved to have asked a race steward that question. We're not insiders, obviously, but I saw a very brisk paced Max Pappas working his way through the crowd and onto a train to presumably Pearson Airport, which is the Toronto airport, to hit the 721 nonstop to Charlotte. But needless to say, I never got a chance to ask Mr. Pappas, friend of the show,
Yeah.
if that was even under consideration.
Yeah, I think you make a great point because, like I said, it wasn't
Of course I
like
do.
I didn't never thought of it while I was
Have you not been
watching. I was
paying
just,
attention to the show?
I've been paying attention, but I just think I just want to go back to it because we had like the over under on when the wing was going to actually fall off because I was convinced it wasn't going to stay on. But then you look back and go, should have been called in? Maybe.
Yeah,
I'm almost
maybe.
leaning towards yes on that.
Yeah, it almost makes me wonder if it's safety for sure, but maybe sprinkled in with a little bit of what's the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pulling
And maybe it's
Ferrucci
sprinkling
in 24th place isn't like bringing in the current points champion leader in second and demanding that he change that wing.
Yeah. I almost think it's like the suspense of the storyline too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it going to fall off? Is it going to stay? What's going to
Oh
happen?
yeah, the
Like,
camera
it
was on
keeps,
that
I
car the
think
whole time.
the viewer like on the edge of their seat, like just waiting
Yeah.
for something to happen.
Yep.
So the suspense is there. So yeah, I think it draws in like
Mm-hmm.
like a good storyline. So yeah, if you just pull them in for a new wing, then it's done.
Yep. Yeah. The Kraft
done
macaroni
story,
and cheese
so.
car got way more broadcast time than the Vivid RX car, and the Vivid RX car is the one that won.
Yeah,
It wasn't the Kraft macaroni and cheese car. It looks
I thought
on
it
the
was
run.
I thought it was the
Journeys
Napa car. I was like,
Journeys. It's like a reward program for the on the run convenience chain. So
yeah, it's part of his other sponsorship
my
stuff. So it kind
useless
of all
knowledge.
falls in.
Yep.
That's my understanding.
Fourth place, Scott Dixon. Dixie has to outscore Pelot by, I believe, 12 points in every race for the rest of the season to overtake Pelot. Didn't happen here, which makes it an even steeper climb going forward. One thing though, Dixon was in the mix all day, and I think that's not unusual. Pelot added only 7 points to his lead over his much more experienced teammate Scott Dixon. Here's what I'll say here, Tim. Dixon will finish ahead of Pelot at both Iowa races. Not saying he's going to win, but I'll tell you that I think he's going to finish ahead of Pelot in both of those races.
I can't wait to see what happens now that you put that out there. I'm not sure if will be the case, but I would say Dixon is obviously much more experienced on ovals. Racing on ovals is a different, sort of game. And so I guess, but Pelot has been strong. He's been strong on ovals. He's been strong at Indy for sure when he's been there. So I'm not sure I can agree with you that that's what's really going to happen. I guess that's why we'll watch the race.
We'll watch the race.
Sure.
Seventh place goes to your favorite rookie, Tim, Marcus Ericsson, right? Had a good race. I mean, he was there. He was mixing it up, right, amongst the leaders there. Tim, do you think Armstrong is the rumored Ganassi driver, quote unquote Ganassi driver, headed to Schenck in 2024?
Marcus Armstrong?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You think he's going to stay put with Ganassi?
I think he's staying put with Ganassi. I think the one that could go there is Ericsson, right?
I think Ericsson goes to Andretti. Yeah.
No, I don't think Armstrong. You're losing Pelot, right?
You're losing Ericsson.
Would say.
Yeah.
You're losing Erickson. I don't think you go. I don't think you just
You
keep
lose
Dixon on the
3.
squad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think that. Yeah, he's staying.
Yeah. Marcus has a 43-point lead over Canapino, who has run all the races, by the way, as Marcus set out the oval rounds. I don't see him losing this rookie of the year, though. Do you?
No, and I didn't pick him. I didn't think he was going to do it just because he wasn't on the ovals. I thought he'd have some
Right.
bad luck in some of these events, but he's been
Smart.
stellar, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, he's been really good for a rookie. Would love to see a little more upfront battles at this point in the season, just because of who you're driving for.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it's pretty good. Road America is your worst finish at 24th, but you had a 6th here, right? As you mentioned,
Yep. 7th.
7th here, and then 9th in the race before that, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah, he's
Detroit was
picking it up.
8th.
Back half of the season,
definitely.
he's picking it up. Marcus Erickson, who I think you thought I was talking about, leaving Ganassi, finished 11th. Strategy bit Marcus a little bit. He was one of those that had to make a 3rd stop, and that effectively put him back in the field. Started 4th, chatting with my neighbor in the grandstands, because I'm friendly that way. I said it wouldn't surprise me.
What was his name?
Dave. Hey, Dave. Tell him about the show. Dave from Guelph. So good to see you, Dave. Good to meet you. He started 4th.
Is he going to watch the show?
I don't know. Hope so.
Did you mention it?
Yeah. Of course I did.
Oh.
I just didn't mention it to Rossi's fiance because I thought that'd be weird. Instead, I talked about their dogs and I talked about what happened to Alexander and all that stuff. So anyway, before the race started, I actually told Dave, my neighbor in the grandstands, that it wouldn't surprise me if Erickson won that race.
Yeah. Well, he didn't, but
stop.
I guess it was kind of a quiet day, in my opinion. I didn't see a whole lot of him all day. He was there and doing his thing. He's started 4th, obviously fell back to 11th, but
he had
on the lead lap. That's all I can really say about
pit stop is what hurt him. So he pit 3 times. So, moving on, Andretti Autosport, 3rd place goes to Herta. The presumed team leader is finally starting to show that leadership. And it doesn't hurt that after 2 strategist changes, they finally found someone who was clicking with Colton Herta. 14th to 3rd, did it with only 2 stops, similar to Pelot. It was lucky, which this team has not had a lot of luck as of late, and masterful. And they haven't seemed very masterful of late either. Both of those attributes have been missing for the number 26 car this season. And Tim, this is his first podium of the season, which I just find unbelievable.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is unbelievable to think of it that way, because he's done well. He's been up there the last 2 races, right? He's been on the pole, didn't win them, but I guess he didn't finish on the podium in any of those. But
pole doesn't necessarily guarantee wins. Thanks for bringing it up, and I know that's not where you're going with it, but I kept hearing these broadcasts and these podcasts that keep saying, well, Colton's got these poles and, he couldn't convert them into wins. And it's like, pole doesn't mean you're going to win, right? Yeah, it gives you a little better chance, but it just means you were really good over 1 lap. Not over a stint in a race.
Yeah, this is really solid, though. As you mentioned, he started 14th, so he missed out with the rain and everything else in the qualifying session. And let's remember that Andretti Autosport, their cars were one of the quickest in all the practices. So they were super quick all weekend. The weather sort of threw a wrench in it when it came to qualification. But at the end of the day, as you mentioned, as a team leader, if you can drive through the field, have a podium finish, get the best you can on the weekend, that's what you really are asking for. So don't throw it away. Don't put it in the wall. We've seen her to do it in the past.
We've seen him do it.
Stay clean and, had to save fuel in order to finish in the 3rd place. I thought he was going to get Pelot at one time, but that didn't happen. But you got to take what you can get sometimes. And that's a great finish for them.
Yeah. 15th place. What just a massive jump, right? From 3rd to 15th for Kirkwood. It started out as a promising race for Kirkwood. I believe many people had his name as a potential winner for this, and including our web guru, right, at IndyCar1909.com. Spencer picked him for the pole, right? And You remember me calling him Wrecky a few episodes ago
Oh
when we
yeah,
talked about?
sure
He's still a
did.
little wrecky,
He
right? He
is.
wrecked Elio. And then my favorite part of this was he gets his penalty, he has to come in and serve his penalty. So the team decided to do work instead of serving the penalty, which gave him a
Mm-hmm.
second penalty, which to me is just
Mm-hmm.
astounding because Brian Herta knows better.
Sure does.
That's the guy in the
Knows
stand.
that you can't touch that car. And it was
Yes.
a touch, kind of looking it over to make sure it
Yeah.
was fine after the hit,
Yeah.
but you can't do that. So stop and go. I guess you could look at it, right? But I don't think you can physically touch it. And
Right.
there was some touching going on in that, so you had to come back in and, actually serve the
Yeah.
penalty.
With a win, Kyle Kirkwood is out of the championship top 10.
Wow. That just tells you consistency pays off in this
Yep.
series, and it was showed last year for sure with Power taking the championship. So you got to be consistent. You got to stay out of trouble. You can't be wrecky, as Dan would call you.
Yeah. Wrecky.
And you got to and the crew's got to use their head if you're serving the penalty just to get the best finish you can. And so you come in twice to the pits.
Yeah,
That's on that 53, right?
Away.
Of 80 some.
Let's throw it away.
Yeah, and that's just unfortunate for Alio. I thought it was just an Alio spin because they didn't show it in the real coverage live
So did
when
I.
I went back. I thought, oh no, Alio, but no, he definitely got punted. So
yeah, 22nd place goes to Romain Grosjean. Tim, what appeared to be an easy renewal earlier this season is now not looking so easy. Not only is Kirkwood wrecky, but I think Grosjean has become very wrecky. And more startling to this situation is he's wrecky on his own. Right? This crash here that took him out of this race was steering wheel slipped out of his hands. I don't know what happened there, right? I don't know. Look, I never drove this thing before. I'm a soda pop salesman. I've never driven an Indy car. I've never done any of that. So I don't, is it possible? Yeah. He says steering wheel slipped out of his hand again, which means it's happened before. So not good. Not good, man.
No, not at all. And I don't know. The only conclusion I can draw is that power steering versus not having power steering, it's different, but you've been in the series now. This is your third year. So
yeah,
you should understand that now. And that wheel's going to kick a little more than in a power steering Formula One car. So there's no excuse. There's no excuse at all for that to happen. It's almost
Dixon. Dixon has this giant knob like on his steering wheel that's right above, his thumbs on the, I think it's Dixon that has the steering wheel like that. And then the Penske's, if you look at the Penske's, it looks like they kind of wedge their thumbs in there nice and tight into the steering wheel. So maybe it's just a question of, you got to ask Romain, what can we do to change this wheel? Give you a little bit more grip.
Yeah. Yeah, there are different versions that will help. Yeah.
I'm
make sure you get your thumbs out of there if you hit the wall.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We've seen that.
We'll break them.
I'm starting to feel like, Tim, the shoe-in for the number 28 DHL Honda might be Marcus Ericsson and not Romain Grosjean. So if Grosjean we're turning it a little bit into silly season, and it's going to be another long show. Sorry, Charlie Mac. But if Grosjean's not back in the 28 next year, what do you think? He's fishing, or do you think he's in another car?
I think he's fishing. I don't think he's in another car. I don't think anybody's. No, who's going to pick him up, right? I don't think anybody's going to pick him up. I doubt that would happen. I'm just thinking, if you have that reputation of hitting the wall, being a little bit wrecky, like your teammate, not putting up results, show burst of speed, right? So you show different areas where, you can be competitive, you can run up front, and then I feel like there's this something in the paddock with people and Roman and how it kind of all unfolds. I don't know if you want that sort of on your team. Like, I don't know if you want that happening within your confines of your own team. And I'm not saying they're not getting along within the team, but you got to think back to last year and what was going on in the team in order for others to move on and disband the team as it was. So I there's I think a lot of people like Grosjean. I think he brings some international flavor for sure. Is it good for the series? Absolutely, yes. It's just fallen on rotten eggs, I guess, is what to say with how it's turned out with Andretti Autosport.
Yeah.
And last year, I think it was more on the team side. This year, I think it's more on the driver's side.
Yeah.
So how do you come together? Like, you got to meet in
Yeah.
the middle, both of you.
I'm with you there. I don't know. We'll see. I think somebody picks him up. Who? I don't know. But I think somebody picks him up.
He's not fishing?
No, I don't think so. Devlin DeFrancesco, one place worse, 23rd. He was out with the mechanical, though. Dylan Welch reported that it was a similar brake situation that Simon Pagenaud had, which is horrifying to me. That these Andretti prepared cars are having brake issues, which makes me wonder, what are they doing with the brakes? Because we don't hear Penske or Ganassi or Arrow McLaren having issues with brakes. Maybe they're hiding it better than they are, but we haven't heard any situation there. So whatever it is, knock it off. Because we still have a situation where Simon Pagenaud is not right, is not back in a seat. We don't want to see that happen.
And you definitely don't want that to happen on a road course or on a street course. Yep. Any course for that matter. We saw it on a street course with Felix a few years ago in Detroit. So
almost went right through it. Remember? Went right over it.
And that wasn't a brake failure. That was more of a stuck throttle. But either or, you don't want any.
Never fessed up to. Yeah.
And if we're talking silly season, that seat's open next year. It's pretty much been talked about. So
potentially,
see what happens.
Penske, Power 4. Before we get into this breakdown, though, I want to say this. I want to say that I feel like Penske is missing a little bit in qualifying. Tim, I don't know if you agree. I mean, McLaughlin started second here, which I mean is not a miss. But this was Will Power's first trip to the Fast Six this season, and he is the undisputed leader in qualifying in this series. Right, both in statistics and in the eyeball test, and this is his first trip to the Fast Six. Newgarden, who's had his issues in qualifying, which I point out every episode, has him as well. So it just makes me wonder what's going on over there at that team. This was not a great showing for this team. I know that Newgarden finished sixth, Newgarden finished fifth, McLaughlin sixth, Power 14th. Can't even speak now. But I feel like this team is a little bit amiss. They were counting on a strategy, I think, that did not pan out. And I want to go back to something you said earlier when you and I were sitting in the stands at the Indy GP, and we watched Lundgaard's first pole. Right over the course of a stint, that Rahal car was not good, and it wasn't getting better. In subsequent stops, where I think that was the difference between the good teams and where Rahal is striving to be. I think that Penske might have looked at Lundgaard and thought, it doesn't really matter. Let him go. That car's not going to make it over the course of a stint. We're going to have the upper hand at some point.
Yeah, like we'll eventually get there, right?
And I think
the car's going to come off. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that when you take a look at Will Power, who could have had a top 5 finish, right? Had to stop for a splash and go, and he was incensed on the radio. Very political on the broadcast, which he's a pro and he's a Penske driver. He was incensed on the radio and said he could have saved. He could have done what they needed him to do. They just didn't give him a blanking number. Right? Yeah. He was incensed by it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, let me back up, right? It works out for Joseph Newgarden, good finish. He needed a good finish because with him, it's feast or famine. I think that he is lucky to get this 5th place here because I also think that he's looking to Iowa, thinking that's where he's really going to make up ground on Palou. I think the fact that the IndyCar community is like counting on Palou to go in there and, choke is kind of laughable, right? Because he's just as it's just as possible he's going to go in there and dominate the weekend there too, because Ganassi puts cars together well everywhere. So it is quite possible,
like a personal challenge.
Yeah.
Personal challenge to go there and show what he can do on the oval.
Yeah. Do I think Newgarden's going to show well there? Absolutely. Is it a foregone conclusion that he's going to sweep the weekend? Absolutely not. Is it a foregone conclusion that Pelot's not going to do well there? No. Is he going to do better than his teammate Dixon? No. But that's what I'm telling you, right? So I think he was lucky with this 5th. McLaughlin was lucky with this 6th. He had some miscues by not pitting under yellow. I don't know what they kept him out for. Again, I think they were counting on a strategy that was just going to fall their way, as opposed to playing the cards that they had in their hand, as opposed to what they think is still left in the deck. And I think that's how they were looking at it. And I already talked about willpower. Slick Willie P, he was incensed by the fact that he had to stop for a stop and go, which was miserable for him. Miserable.
Yeah. They're just not there, right? It's so close, yet a little far behind. McLaughlin showed a pace, obviously, in qualifying, which was a tricky one. But like you said, Newgarden, way to come up and finish where you did. A good day overall, but yeah, power. That's terrible. You don't expect that out of Team Penske at all. Not a single bit.
Nope. Power 5. You want to go first?
No, I want you to go. I want to hear what you got to say. I'm very interested in where you're at on this one.
I think you're going to be surprised by this, and I think you're going to be surprised by some of the elements I'm going to hit you with here. Dan's Power 5, Honda Indy Toronto, episode 74. Ed Carpenter Racing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
Yes, you are.
Tell me why.
Since Detroit, Tim, Rinus VeeKay, and that's really who I'm talking about here, has an average finish of 13.3. From the first race to Detroit, which is where all hell broke loose at Ed Carpenter Racing, his average finish was 16.4. Small sample size, I understand, but don't forget the change here. Ed Carpenter sent his friend Connor Daly home early and replaced him with the veteran Ryan Hunter-Reay. And I'll speak to that in a minute. Rinus finished 13th after starting 12th. He too was on a 2-stop strategy and needed some luck. Luck wouldn't necessarily be on his side, as they had a long pit stop that pushed him from what surely would have been a top 10 finish to 13th. He emerged from that long pit stop in 16th, battled his way to 13th, and really would have been well inside the top 10 if it would have just been a flawless execution of a stop there. I think this move, Tim, to have Ryan Hunter-Reay as a teammate is working out, and I think it's going to work out through the balance of the season. I think a little lucky in that he finished the way that he did, but I think that's part of some of the growing pains, and I think it's some of the things that they're going to get together. Okay. Similar to what Rahal did after Indy and Detroit, they made some difficult decisions. I already mentioned they talk about firing Connor Daly, right? Rahal, obviously, they fired some people. They reassigned some people. They didn't remove any drivers. That's a big change in the middle of a season, right? But it's paying dividends on that Rahal side. You can see Lundgaard here with this win. He was our dark horse pick. He was a dark horse pick, right? Which means none of us had really any expectations of it. It would have just been the furthest one, right? It would have been the one with the tallest odds. It's the one that would have paid the most money, right? If we were betting. I think if ECR wants to be in the conversation each week, they need to have no hesitation in making future changes this drastic, similar to what Rahal is doing now. Does that mean keeping RHR in the car past this year? I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not advocating for that at all. And that's not because I'm a Ryan Hunter-Reay hater, even though it seems I am at times. I give Ryan Hunter-Reay a lot of credit, in fact, for the way he built his career out of very difficult circumstances. You could look it up, and I think some of the big time IndyCar faithful are well aware of this, but he was in litigation with Paul Gentilozzi for 15 years for a wrongful termination and disparagement of character lawsuit. Right? Not to mention stepping in the ethanol sponsored car at Rahal Letterman at the time, after the team fired Jeff Simmons well into the season. And despite competing in only 6 races in 2007, He is your IndyCar Rookie of the Year, Mr. Ryan Hunter-Reay. So I do give him a lot of credit for how he has built his career and what he has done with his career. Beyond that, do I think he needs to be in the naming for any open seat? No. Is he the right person for this circumstance? I think he is, and I think the numbers are showing it. Palou has a 3 position increase in finishes this season, and look where he's at.
Interesting.
That's my Power 5 team.
Very nice dissertation on your Power 5. The thing that I learned about Ryan Hunter-Reay is that the Captain America is half Canadian.
Yeah,
did you know that?
I said no, of course not.
I didn't know that either. I heard that.
Not good with geography.
Yeah, not good with geography, but so maybe he's Captain North America. Anyways, off to
Timmy's Power 5.
Off to my Power 5. My Power 5 is probably not a surprise to many because I really like this team. It's a team that's a very small team coming into the series last year, has built a 2-car team this year. Coming off a fairly solid weekend, it has to go to Juncos Hollinger Racing. Good thing you got that off your tire. Because I think it's important to note that Agustin Canapino, who finished 12th, matches his best finishes that he's had all season. And he's had 12th places at events like St. Pete, Texas, and now Toronto. Coming off of last race where he finished 23rd, it's good that he came off of Mid-Ohio and was able to do a lot here in Toronto. So I got to give it for the team for that. Callum Ilott, I think, is always in the picture week in and week out. They've had some off weeks. He didn't do a superb job this weekend, but I felt like early mid-season, I call it early mid. So not at the beginning, they really came out firing on all cylinders, had some setbacks. I think the team is now rebounded. They're coming back again. And I think what we're going to see through the rest of the season is them get back to early season form with August Canapino having some seat time under him that he can be up there with Ilott. So look for them to start ruffling the feathers of, the top 12, even Fast 6. I think you're going to see some of these guys up there. So I think they are rebounding, obviously, with what Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan have done, that it's going to take a little more effort than what it did early in the season to be up there in the mix, just because I think that team is also rebounding. Maybe others, as Penske, you mentioned, sort of still trying to hold on and do their thing. But I have a feeling maybe it's not going to happen in Iowa, but coming out of Iowa, look for Juncos Hollinger and the team. I think they're plugging along and quietly doing it. And I think this weekend showed that they're getting their rookie driver up to speed too.
Yeah. I agree with you on Juncos Hollinger Racing. I think they're a great organization. I think they make the best of what they have, and they don't have the resources of some of these other teams, but you wouldn't know it based on how they compete week in and week out. I'm fearful that Ilott finds himself poached into another team, which I think would be great for him. I'm not fearful from that perspective. I'm just fearful from the Juncos Hollinger perspective, right? Who goes in there, who takes the step back to go into a smaller team like that and really gambles on themselves. And who do they put in there? Dude, I spent some money on some,
where does he go?
JHR merch this week, right? So baby girl wanted to rep some
I like that. Yeah, you sent that picture.
Gear.
I saw
Yeah.
it.
So
it's
on our Instagram.
So that's pretty sweet.
That's on there. But I don't disagree with you. And I think Canapino, he's a hell of a driver. I really do. He's a hell of a talent, and he's a great driver, smart guy, and he's putting it together. That's for sure. So they got a good pick there.
So that's my Power 5.
There you go. Good pick, Timmy. Palou continues to lead his teammate Dixon by 117 points. That's unreal. Newgarden remains third, 126 points adrift. I don't know if I want to go through all these. Ericsson, Award, McLaughlin, all still in the same spot. Christian Lundgaard is your biggest mover in the championship top 10. He goes from 10th to 7th. He's 169 points behind Palou, but I'll tell you what, he could be knocking on a top 5 championship finish here by the end of the season. You never know. I mean, you never know, right? Between Ericsson and Award, they got to get some wins. Power slips one to eighth place. He's 175 back. Herta maintains that ninth place position, and then Rossi slips down from eighth to 10th. He's between.
So nobody new in the top 10, just some shuffling.
Nobody new. Yeah,
Lundgaard
just some
going
shuffling around. Yep.
3 and Power down 1.
Yeah,
and some others moving around as well. Rossi down 2 actually after a disastrous weekend for him.
Yeah, but still in the top 10, which is really, really good. Because that team is still coming together. So that's good. The one that shocks me is Kirkwood, in 11th place. He has a win. And he's just, 9 points clear of Felix Rosenqvist in 12th. So,
yeah,
that's pretty interesting to me. Kellemilat 17th. Canapino 21st. I mean, those cars, if we understand, and we don't understand the leadership, the leader circle points, right? I mean, both of these Juncos Hollinger racing cars are in the money. And there's some teams out there that are not.
Yep.
Right? I mean, Ray Hall's on the bubble. Ed Carpenter Racing's on the bubble. Shank is on the bubble. So
Foyt.
Yeah, Foyt. Yeah. Well, with Peterson, because Ferrucci's 18th. So, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We'll see how it works out. Hey, look, we want all our listeners engaged, to continue to send us what you think, what we talked about with Ryan Hunter-Reay, what we talked about with Team Penske, what we talked about Palou potentially hunting down Lundgaard. Make sure that you're engaging with us. I'm going to say it a couple of more times here too. But Tim, you got time for a grid walk?
Yeah, I got time for a grid walk. Hopefully the listeners do too. I know we're
absolutely. Hang in with us. Snap-on renews with IMS and IndyCar. Snap-on will continue as the official tools and equipment partner of both IndyCar and IMS. That also means, presumably, that they'll continue to be on Joseph Newgarden's car from time to time, as they were this week in Toronto. I think I was in the Snap-on Tools hotel this weekend because there was a bunch of people Sunday morning having breakfast wearing some really cool Snap-on Team Penske shirts. So was pretty slick to see. Congrats to Hy-Vee.
I'd like to see the livery a little different so I can make sure I tell the two apart. Yeah, it's a little too
those
close.
Shirts were white. I think it would be cool if Newgarden's car was all white with the with the Snap-on livery. I think it would look pretty sweet.
It looks too much like Verizon.
Yeah. Congrats to Hy-Vee on this win. They get to ride some momentum into their own event at the Iowa doubleheaders. It's been a lean couple of years, Tim, for this sponsor who came in with a bang, right? With Jack Harvey and the, everything that they did in store and all the activation at the track and everything else that they put out there. I'm thrilled to see this because frankly, and I'm not sure that this really changes things, but I'm not sure how much, what their long-term future is in IndyCar, but I think this helps. Right. I think this helps too. Yeah. Immensely.
I was happy for them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a big deal.
And as you mentioned, it is a big deal.
Yep. It is a big deal. Andretti Autosport announced a quote unquote reorganization for next year. I don't know that I would have chosen that descriptor. Right. Especially given what they announced was that they would be hiring 4x4 drivers starting in 2024 rather than, these are my words, bidding out the 29 to a ride buyer. Right. They hope this change will help continue the elevation of their program. So they intend to hire 4 drivers. I shouldn't say guys, hire 4 drivers and use the Andretti Autosport family of sponsorships to help pull that team together. Yeah. So we'll see if it elevates their program. I think they've got some changes, Timmy, right? I think Colton Kirkwood definitely locked in. Grosjean, I don't know what happens there. It just doesn't look good based on his recent results against the backdrop of his potential. But also, with DeFrancesco, I think he's definitely on his way out. So,
yeah.
Tim, I got a question for you. You expect to see Simon Pagenaud in the lineup for Iowa?
I would hope so. I hope whatever's going on is cleared up. It's got to be concussion protocol is all I can think of. If you're out that many races without a major injury that is visible and, so on and so forth. But you don't want to take a big impact.
No, and that's the thing. I'm going to disagree with my podcast co-host here. I would put it at 50-50 at best. right? I am not a doctor. I'm a soda pop salesman. I say it all the time. I do have a little bit of experience with concussions. My son had one. Nothing to the degree that we would expect this to be, but it's a very tricky situation. And even though you feel good and you feel like you're good, and you might pass the protocols, and you might remember, right, dog, cat, wheelchair, elevator, or whatever it is. But once you get going in circles, less than a mile track, the G forces, the higher
Yeah.
probability of a big hit.
Mm-hmm.
For me, 50-50 at best. I think you
So who you
wait.
got driving?
Connor Daly.
Okay.
Yeah,
That would
I
make
think.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to me he makes a lot of sense. I don't know who else you'd put in there. I don't know if you really want to put a rookie in there. I don't know if you want to put a Linus Lundqvist in there or what have you. He's always lurking around. Um, I think Connor Daly would be the most logical choice for
I think so
Iowa.
too.
Yeah. IMS Museum announced an $89 million update. I don't know. I didn't realize this, but did you realize this is not owned by the Speedway? This is not owned by the series. This is not owned by Penske Entertainment. It's a wholly owned entity unto itself.
Was not aware.
Me neither. Kind of surprised by it, actually. Part of the $89 million update will be funded by a $20 million endowment from Lilly Endowment. I'm sure that's Lilly, the pharmaceutical company out of Indianapolis. The closing of the museum for construction will occur in phases, which I think is funny. It's going to occur in phases because they're going to close the basement in October of this year, and then they're going to close it completely in November of this year. So I don't really know if that's phases. It's just going to be like 30 days apart. And it's going to remain closed until April of 2025, where it'll be ready to go for that.
It's a long
Indianapolis
time.
500. That is a long time. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, for that big of an announcement to say it's
Oh.
happening like in the fall here is interesting. And so if you want to go see it, what it looks like, you better make a trip out there because, you need to go do it before they redo it just to see what it was and what it turns into.
They had the executive director on Kevin Lee and Kirk Cavan's podcast, which I listen to every week, and I can't remember the name of it, in May, and they were interviewing him, and he kind of alluded to something like this, and that was the first thought that came to my mind was, oh, they're in for a big renovation. I didn't expect a $90 million renovation, but that's kind of what I expected. So I'm sure the plans have been in place, but now was the time to announce it, I'm sure. So in our last episode, we discussed Daniel Ricciardo, a little F1 news, potentially replacing Nick DeVries. Well, it happened, and Daniel will start alongside Yuki Tsunoda at the upcoming Hungarian Grand Prix. I don't know my expectations here, Tim. What about you? Think about it at all?
I'm excited for it. I don't know if there's going to be I don't have any expectations
when it comes
to the racing.
Change?
I think it's good. Yeah, I don't think there's, I think the series is sort of wrapped up with what's going to happen there. But I'm glad to see that Daniel's in the seat. I feel bad for Nick DeVries, but it's all about being able to perform. So I think it's a good audition for Daniel to get back in a full ride next year, which I think most people plan on seeing him in a full ride. I think that's the expectation. That's what's going to happen. But this gives a little jump start to that.
I'm anxious to know your picks for Iowa.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, right? You got 2 days of racing. You got Saturday, you got Sunday, you got minimal practice time. I think when you think about that, I think you think of what happened last year, domination by Team Penske and particularly Joseph Newgarden. So I think you got to have him winning one of them, whether it's Saturday or Sunday. That's sort of TBD. But let's go. I'm going to pick him for Saturday to win. I think on pole, and just because of performance last year and how strong they are, for pole, I think I'm going to put Award up there on the pole for that. Day 2, I've got Rossi grabbing the pole, and I've got Scotty Mack winning that one. So it's kind of where I'm laying out this. I don't think they've got the speed there on one lap, maybe, but over long stints, I think the team will perform and they'll sweep this Iowa thing. If I had to go in the back of the field and pick somebody to do well, I got Ferrucci. I just think,
Ooh, I like that
they
pick.
showed what they could do and I'll have them for both. I don't know if I need one for each race. I just think Ferrucci's going to be someone to watch. They haven't done much since Indy, and I think the Oval is going to be the time for them to shine. Could you get an Evan Carpenter of a car up there? Possibly, but I'm not going there.
I'm not going there. Um,
Who you got?
I don't know. I'm struggling. I'm struggling with it a little bit. I am struggling with it a little bit.
I like to do whatever comes to my mind and just go, this is what I have this inclination that could happen. Obviously, my two winners are not picking, wild and crazy stuff. I think it's what most people expect. Could you have Ganassi up there? Sure, you could, but you think Dixon or Power is going to get their first win of the season and continue their streaks of winning in every season? So that's another interesting thing to watch. Could this weekend be the weekend that the guys do it? Because you think of an oval, you think of the experience you need, you think of the teams that are dominant. They're on quite the team, so it's a possibility with those too. So not to confuse your picks. Who you got, Dan?
Do I think one of the veterans are going to get the win? Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, if I understand the qualifying correctly, right? It's 2 laps, and your first one sets Saturday, and your second one sets Sunday. I think that was the situation last year.
Is that how that?
Hope I'm not wrong on that. I could be making it up because I make up stuff like this. Pole on Saturday, Sato-san, Takuma Sato.
Oh my Lord, I got to write this down.
Yes, you do. Win, William Power on Saturday.
Oh, nice.
My dark horse, Graham Rahal.
Oh Lord! Wow. So you have confidence that it's not just a false dawn.
It's a dark horse, pal. Pull on the second day, Sunday, Will Power to win Pato Award. My dark horse on Sunday, Juan Roman Grosjean.
Yep. Oh my Lord. Nice. I like your picks. I'm
us your
surprised
picks.
Dixon didn't squeak into any of this.
I already said I'd love to hear what Dixon was going to win. I think he'll finish ahead of Palou, but I don't think he's going to win. Tell us your picks in the comments section on YouTube or tweet at us. We have really good social engagement, and I love it. And, we always try to respond to all of it. All the links are in the show notes, both for the podcast as well as the YouTube channel. Don't forget to visit IndyCar1909.com. Great stuff and updated stuff to read there. Spencer does an amazing job with that website. And we're appreciative of being part of that effort by Spencer. So make sure you take a look at that. So that's all I got, Timmy.
All I got. It's been fun for sure.
It's been a hoot.
Off to Iowa for some concerts and some racing.
Hey, could I change my mind last minute and go to Iowa? No, I doubt it. I doubt it. I don't think that's in the travel budget.
I may get a text on Wednesday saying, "Hey, you want to go to Iowa?
You want to go to Des Moines?" So, yeah, me, Win, and Jill are going to Des Moines.
Maybe. Zach Brown's on my list to see, so maybe.
Curry Underwood, Kenny Chesney, Zach Brown, and Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran, Zach Brown. Are they on the same day? We have no idea, do we?
They are. Yeah, Zach Brown is the pre-race on Sunday, and Ed Sheeran is the post-race Sunday.
Oh, it might be the day I need to go.
There you go. It wouldn't fit my schedule because I'd have to be here for Monday. So,
whoever's going, have fun.
Enjoy. Let us know how it is.
Yep.
That's all I got, Timmy. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for listening.
All right. Good night.